Welcome everyone. In this video I have a really cool example, two in fact, and so both of these is the same principle. I will show first in a Kasparov game and then I'll show it in my game. So what attacking principle am I talking about? So this is a really simplified principle that I've heard Kasparov use, and so basically what the principle is whenever you're attacking an enemy king, like what white is doing here, we're trying to get to this black king, what you want is at least two more attackers than there are defenders. If you have at least two more attackers than they have defenders, oftentimes their attack is going to break through, and you'll end up with a nice checkmate. So that's just a really good guideline to follow, especially if you can't calculate because it's a very complicated position, or you're low because of time pressure, or any of those type of factors. It's just a really nice guideline to have if you don't have the ability to calculate it. Now in this case, Karpov just played this critical error here. This with this queen to e8. This game is game 20 of the 1990 World Championship. And for those who know the continuation here, it is a fairly shocking move, but it's by far the best way to break through here. And this is knight captures h6. Very strong move. And to a lot of players, this might look counterintuitive, because if we go back here, Karpov is actually up a pawn. So black is up material, yet white actually is sacrificing. Now, despite this, Kasparov actually said he actually didn't calculate too much with this. He said he barely looked at it. If you look at the time when he actually played in the game, he played this knight captures h6 very quickly. And he said, I just knew it was winning. And the reason why is because he uses this principle, where he counts how many attackers he has. And so really, all of white's pieces could be aimed at the king side. We have both bishops here, very strong. And then if that's not enough, we also have both knights, very active, can pounce into the position. Even both rooks are actually playing a role in the attack. This might keep the king from coming to, back to the queen side somehow in the far future. And this rook is, of course, very active. So these are all very good attacking pieces. And then finally, even the queen could possibly swing into the attack very quickly. So all these pieces are aimed quite quickly, quite literally, at the king side. So if you add them all up, these four here, plus this is 7. And black, they only have 4 pieces that I count. They have these 4, and because this pawn is really doing a good job, defending the king, especially when we capture here after this pawn is gone, you could even count this as a defender. So I count black as 5 defenders and white has 7. But just by knowing our guideline, even though he's down material here, black's pieces that are inactive, all these over here, they're not really doing too much. And so it doesn't really matter how much material they have because they're not near the king. They're not close enough to defend. So in the game, as they continued, Kasparov knowing this will break through, Karpov tried to cut off one of these attackers. This bishop was very powerful, so that's a good try. And so, of course, white's going to relocate here. And then he's going to sacrifice, of course, more material. He gave up, what would have been the material here. Now he gives up this bishop. But that really doesn't mean much because he's up so much material as far as the attackers go. Even though material-wise for the whole game, he's actually down by 3 points. But it doesn't really matter where, the material is if it's not near the king. So the key is that it's what's in the attack, not what's everywhere on the board. And so, of course, Kasparov will bring easily another piece into the attack. We have queen to g4. Very nice move. And, like I said, the sacrifice on b2 is really nothing to fear because, white knows they have plenty of attackers on the king side and they have confidence that their attack will successfully work. So Karpov tries to play bishop to c8, try and counterplay to hold on. And now we have queen to h4 check. They try and block with rook to h6. We have knight captures h6, g captures h6. And after a few moves here, knight g5, adding another attacker. Now we have rook to e8. And very similar to before, where, now we're making progress with our attack. Now white has 5 pieces in the attack, but black only has 3 defenders. And this is similar because the ratio is still 2 more, just like the 7 to 5. The 5 to 3 is what we have here. But the 5 to 3 is much more devastating than the 7-5. Because even though it's a difference of 2 attackers, we're simplifying. And the further down that we get, the more powerful these pieces in the attack will be. So here, white should be very confident if they know this principle. So black tries to defend by cutting off this bishop that was, attacking really nicely on the king side. So they try bishop to f5. But we have this really nice queen sacrifice. Queen captures h6 check. They take. We have knight to f7 check. And of course, they're going to get the queen back. And so here, some simplification. all this is pretty standard stuff. A few moves later, and Karpov ends up resigning because he's just down way too much material, and white's attack broke through. And, if we go back to the earlier position, back with this critical error here with queen to e8, knowing what we know now, seeing how many attackers white had, maybe Karpov could have tried to hang on with something like knight to d3. Maybe that was better because then you're trying to cut off, these attackers from the queen side that really helped in this attack. Maybe something could trade down like this, and perhaps the game continues roughly equal. But without that being played, we had this really spectacular attack. The knight captures h6, giving up even more material with sheer confidence knowing that their attack is going to break through because they have more attackers than defenders. So that was the first example we'll look at. So the second example I'll show from the ending of one of my games. So here, very similar to what we looked at, we have an attack going on. So here my opponent has just played bishop back to c1, trying to defend their king from this attack. But if we count the attackers, notice that black has 4 attackers here. And if we count how many defenders white has, really they only have 1 defender, this bishop. Maybe you could count the queen, if it comes in, somehow defend somewhere to the king side. So really I'd say they have 2 defenders, we have 4 attackers. And so knowing that rule, where we have at least 2 more attackers than defenders, we're confident that our attack can break through. And so because of that, I am not afraid to open up lines. So I actually start with knight to c3 check. And this also has the benefit of cutting off the queen. That way the queen, one of the valuable defenders, has less of a chance of, trying to help aid in the defense. So we just have enough attackers, we don't mind sacrificing a little bit. So they move their king to a1. And now, knowing this principle, I am not afraid to sacrifice. I really want to open up the position. And so I play bishop captures a3. Again, this is completely fine here because I just know the principle. I have plenty of attackers. If I sacrifice 1 or 2, I should have enough to checkmate. And just to show, what actually did happen was rook captures d4 in the game. But I'll show what happens if they take. So if they take the bishop, of course I have a mate in 1, queen to b1 checkmate. And if they try and take my knight, well, it's also a checkmate because here I just have bishop captures c1, removing one of my attackers for one of their defenders. But now, because I have two attackers, they really have no defenders. That's 2 versus 0. That's in line with our added 2 attackers. So now we follow with the check. They're forced over. And just like the principle has, we have a forced checkmate. But the game didn't go that way. In the actual game, they went rook captures d4. And now, same idea, where we're just trying to break through. And so I confidently have played bishop captures b2 check. And I'm giving up 1 attacker, but, also taking one of their defenders. So they recapture back. Now I have queen to a5 check, forcing the, bishop or rook to block on the a file. And then after they do, we have another idea, and this is checkmate. Can't escape because the knight, and all of this happened simply because I had enough attackers compared to their defenders. So if you want to attack like Garry Kasparov did, and also what I did in my game, you can do it in your games too. The general guideline is to have at least 2 more attackers than they have defenders. If you can do that, you should be pretty confident that with the right technique, your attack will usually break through. So I hope this principle has helped everyone, and I will see you in the next chess video.